Yeah, talking about electric vehicles and the dangers and the good and the bad. Joining me now is Patrick Durham with is it Stashed Training.
Correct.
I like it with the
Stash training.
the mustache right there. I've talked to you before, but I know I have new viewers all the time. Give me a little bit of your background, your expertise, and you have a lot of it.
Yeah, so I kind of play two roles. I've been a mechanical engineer since 2006, worked in a lot of different industries, but for the last 14 years, I've worked in the advanced development side of the automotive industry. A lot of different projects, but since about 2018, I started working on electric vehicles and the battery box structure for electric vehicles. And because of that, I really had to get deep into lithium-ion batteries, understand how they work, and became a bit of an expert in that field. At the same time, I've also been a firefighter for 18 years as well. Currently, currently the captain and training officer at my station here in Troy, Michigan, and that kind of led me down the path of training firefighters and training other people about the hazards of lithium-ion batteries and what to do if there is a failure.
And that brings me, I've talked to you before, but this weekend I saw something out of California that just caught my attention. And I'm going to bring up a picture on the screen. Apparently, there were cars and this highway, I-15 near Barstow, California, which is in the middle of nowhere, I believe.
Right.
People who go to Vegas, I think, take this route. And there was, I think, 40 hours of people stuck in traffic. People were having to, use the bathroom. They were running out of gas in their cars. And explain what this is, what we're looking at right here. This was being transported on a flatbed tractor trailer, like we all see things, but this is not a cargo container. What is this?
Yeah, so this looks like a shipping container, but really what this is a battery energy storage system. They're designed to hold a lot of power, and typically we see these tied into the grid. They're used to store power, discharge into the grid to help supplement during peak demand hours. They recharge them at night, kind of helping with the energy, the power grid itself. They also use these for events where they might, it's essentially a giant battery. It's full of lithium ion batteries, but during large events, they'll truck these in, they'll have charging stations attached to them, and then people can drive their EV to this large event, charge their EV while they're at the event, and then leave. So there's a
So
few
like a
different.
big outdoor concert in the middle of nowhere, they could bring these in and supply the energy.
Exactly. There's a lot of different uses for them.
Okay. Now, apparently it fell, I don't know what, an accident, fell off the truck, but did it explode how did the fire happen? I mean, how does that happen?
So these units aren't designed like an electric vehicle. So when we're designing an electric vehicle, we've got criteria in place for crash to make sure the batteries stay safe, different G loads. But in this case, they're typically meant to be in a stable environment where they're sitting on the ground, they're not moving. So likely what happened when this was going down the road, it crashed, it rolled off the trailer at a high rate of speed. Things inside of that box that should have stayed in place, like the batteries, the battery modules, likely got knocked loose. You could have had arcing, you could have had mechanical damage to those battery modules, the battery cells, and lithium ion batteries don't like any of that.
Yeah.
Aside from that, these units are going to be active during the time. It's not like you can shut these units down. There's always power
Oh,
stored inside of them. So they've got their own cooling systems. And when you've got these out in the desert, 110 degrees, they were saying,
yeah.
there's a very good likelihood that it actually overheated in there as well after the crash. So when the batteries become mechanically damaged or damaged in any way, they can start going into what we call thermal runaway, where they either catch directly on fire, and it's a fairly violent fire,
Oh.
or they start off gassing. And what they're off gassing is a very flammable gas. Big chunk of the gas is actually hydrogen, so it's a big hazard.
So the firefighters, obviously, when this went down, they did not. I mean, they may not have known. I'm assuming, hopefully, they knew what was going on. I see markings on the box there, but they cannot rush in immediately on something like this. Because that's a danger for their lives.
Absolutely. There was an incident back in 2018 in Surprise, Arizona, and the firefighters didn't rush in. They took a long time, methodical approach to opening the door on one of these units, and
Wow.
there was an explosion that nearly killed 4 of them. So the fire service is very aware of the hazards, or at least they should be very aware of the hazards involved in these units. You don't want to be opening the doors. The biggest thing is just to isolate and keep your distance.
Wow. Okay. So that, yeah, I'm bringing up the articles here back in that situation in Surprise, Arizona. So with this, is that why it takes, I mean, there was 45 hours. Does it burn itself out? Is that even a thing? Or how does that, do you just let it run its course? I mean, maybe I'm asking stupid questions, but how does that
Yeah,
work?
essentially the best thing to do is let this thing burn itself out. There's not really a way for firefighters to access this. There's really no when it comes to the batteries like this, it's very difficult to deal with. What the fire department ended up doing is they got heavy equipment in there and they ended up dragging this thing away from the road. And
Okay.
last I saw, they still had a unit, just one unit sitting there watching it, but it was a good distance away from the road. So they're able to open up the roadway and get traffic flowing again.
And maybe, like I said, there is no stupid question I've heard, but you can't use water. Is there special chemicals you can spray on it? There's really nothing, right? Or no?
No, there isn't really anything to right now. There's no good solution. Water is
Gotcha.
actually the best solution. And
Mm.
it's kind of it's a tough thing to deal with because you spray water on it and the idea is you're cooling everything inside
Yeah.
and that stops that cascading thermal runaway effect where it's going from battery cell to battery cell to cell.
Okay.
On the other hand, when you're putting water in there, now you're damaging these cells, you're getting them wet, and you could cause them to go into thermal runaway anyway. So it's kind of a catch-22. So
Wow.
just allowing these things to burn out really is the best solution, especially in the
Oh,
middle of the desert.
yeah, and this is different from electric. I want to show you this video that I found. This was in Canada. Two cars, two EVs. They crash.
Yeah.
You can literally have explosions.
Well, unfortunately, this video has been going around.
Is that real?
It's not. So this is actually from
See?
2010.
I'm
I
glad I
believe
asked
it's
you because I saw that.
yeah,
I'm like, I'm glad
yep.
I asked you. You're the
Yeah,
expert.
I believe it was from Russia, and they were gas cylinders that were in that truck.
See, I hate when
So
people, cause that's that. Well, I have
yeah,
you on here, and that's what, if I'm wrong, I call myself out, and that's good to know. I talked to you, I think it was last year when there was a fire at the factory Zero in
right,
Detroit, and that's where they make electric vehicles, correct?
correct. I believe they're making the electric Hummer down there. I'm not sure what exactly they're making down there right now, but I know that was one of the vehicles they're making down there.
Okay. And I know we talked at the time, and it seemed like there was a lot of uncertainty, at least with the public. And that's your job, kind of, to educate people. This is the scene from the air on when this happened. So when this
Right.
happened, I texted you, and you kind of, all those firefighters who are there right now, are they trained in this sort of thing, or that's where you come in and helping people train
It's
them?
one Yeah, that's one of the areas that where I come in. There is a lack of training in the fire service. There's not many of us out there that are very knowledgeable in this area. So, there from my knowledge, there's only a half dozen of us in the US that are really out there training that know about these batteries. And we
Wow.
do talk from time to time. The factory zero fire actually happened because they had a large crate full of batteries, and a fork truck operator actually stabbed that crate full of batteries with the
Ooh,
forks.
that's not good.
Again, these batteries don't like mechanical damage, and they started lighting off, and they ended up removing that crate. My understanding was there was very little fire damage in the building, but the smoke damage was significant.
Wow. I'm looking at this aerial from the helicopter. I see those black things. I don't know if those are batteries. I can't tell what's what. It's just a shot from a helicopter. But
Right.
um, yeah. So since we last talked, we talked about the industry and everything, trying to educate more people. I think maybe even a year since I talked to you, a little less. Have things gotten better when it comes to education, or are we still struggling on getting the information out to the public, to the first responders? Is it still a battle?
It's still a bit of a battle. There's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of people don't quite understand the problem with these batteries or why they fail or how to stop the failure. So it's tough to deal with right now. I think it's going to be some job security for myself for a long time, I think.
Are there other options? Is that the only way? And I'm not an expert in this, to have an electric vehicle, the lithium ion. Is that the battery? Is that how it's done? Or are there other ways? I know there's other ways energy, but is that how it's going to be going forward? That this model battery, just like this?
Yeah, there's a lot of research being done on lithium-ion batteries. There's different battery chemistries that research is being done on. Um, I don't think lithium-ion will be the future,
Really?
but there's going to be something ideally safer that's going to replace it. But I think we're a long ways away from actually realizing that and having it basically having it mass produced.
Gotcha. I thought back in the day, years ago, I remember, I forget what kind of car they were, I guess hybrid, Prius. I mean, back in the day, were those lithium ion batteries because it was half gas, half, you stop and you
Right.
steer at a light, you let up on the gas, and battery takes over. Was that the same thing back in the day that we're doing now?
I mean, it's a similar thing, but they used a different battery chemistry. And what you'll see with Toyota is they're very risk adverse. And they were using nickel metal hydride back then, and they've used it really up until recently. I think some of their vehicles still use the nickel metal hydride battery chemistry. It is a lot safer. It doesn't have the problems with thermal runaway that lithium ion has.
Yeah.
But in order to get these full electric vehicles, or really the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, you really need the lithium ion battery chemistries.
I've seen some, and I think I talked to you about it via text, some recalls at times. I see every once in a while from companies, they say, if you have, vehicle X, a EV, leave it parked outside because of a recall.
Right.
People should follow that, right? Because I've seen they burned down homes before. I mean, it's probably a rare situation, but it can't follow those recalls when you get them, I assume.
Right. Yeah, it's just something you don't want to mess with. If you get that type of recall, it's absolutely advisable to follow it. These fires can be pretty tough to deal with. As far as an electric vehicle, it's very similar to what I was talking about with that energy storage system that was laying on its side. Ideally, we want to let them burn. If we have a traditional vehicle fire, so a combustion engine vehicle fire, we're talking a couple hundred gallons of water, maybe 30 minutes. When it comes to electric vehicles, we're seeing fire crews being on scene for 6-8 hours and putting 40 to 60,000 gallons of water on that vehicle. Now, when you look at that situation, is that water really doing anything? Not really. They're essentially letting it burn. They're just spraying water on top of it while it's burning.
Huh. Okay. Wow. And I'm not saying, or no one's saying, you're anti EV or for EV. You just want to educate people about this. Does there need to be more? I know you're not the fire chief or the chief, or the governor, but does there need to be more investment in technology to for fire departments, or is there technology that could help local municipalities when it comes to this danger? Is there anything that can help? I mean, the water, but what can help it? Is there really nothing? Is there? I mean,
yeah, right now there really isn't a lot for us. Training and awareness. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is get that education out to the different fire departments. And that's a lot of departments, especially when you look in the U.S., but in Michigan, but across the U.S., like 60 to 70% of departments are volunteer, and they don't necessarily have the budgets to get that training. So that's a lot of the departments I talk to. That's where they struggle, is the budget.
So maybe in that situation, government grants, I'm for less government involvement, but in that situation, government grants, training grants to help those type of departments, because I-75 in northern Michigan, it's a lot of stuff going on there, and there's a lot of departments, like you said. So maybe that could improve with grants or funding to help that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's one thing Michigan does very well, is we have a system called Smoke, where our training gets our training is uploaded to, and people can sign up for training. And that's actually funded through the fireworks funds in Michigan, the taxes on fireworks.
Okay. But that I didn't know. Okay, so that is good. The industry, it sounds like the industry needs to work with first responders and all kind of get on the same page. Is it heading in that direction? I would hope the GM, Toyota, all of them are when they design this, or their engineers, or they're realizing the worst case scenario. I would hope, I would think.
I don't feel like that's necessarily the case. Some companies are definitely better than others. GM has had a program out there to train first responders about electric vehicles. Actually, I was just invited out there about a month ago to the Milford Proving Grounds, where they were cutting apart electric vehicles, which was great. So get some some first responders hands-on experience with these newer vehicles, because honestly, when we're training on vehicles and cutting apart vehicles, most of the time they're 15, 20-year-old vehicles. So to be able to get firefighters with hands on these new vehicles, it's really great. Tesla is actually the other company out there that's been doing a really good job of getting information out to first responders, and they've been doing that really since day one.
And not necessarily a lot of people, it makes the news when something like that happens or a house burns down because of an electric vehicle. Or is it, and everyone says, oh, is it happening more? Maybe we're just seeing those instances more, or is it happening more as more become are on the market? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one because we don't, as a fire service, we don't collect the data on vehicle
Hmm.
fires the way we should. And we
Hmm.
have no way, we have a national reporting system, but we have no way to differentiate an electric vehicle from a combustion engine vehicle. We can't differentiate, that electric vehicle. Was it charging? Was it because of the battery? Was it something else that caused the fire? Then the battery caught on fire. Maybe the battery wasn't even involved in that fire.
Huh.
So that's a struggle we have right now. We don't have good data around around electric vehicle fires.
That makes sense. So
So
like a house fire, when you go in, they usually pinpoint the cause, this, that, and that.
right.
So, and that would be good maybe with car fire to know exactly what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and it's something we've never collected because realistically, a car fire is basically a step up from a dumpster fire. So we've
Yeah.
never really, it's not something we've ever really cared about.
Wow. Okay. Now the push in government, Governor of Michigan, several other states, they want to have they would love to have a lot of EVs on the road by 2035. And I'll be careful. I don't want to be political, but some in the administration, Governor Whitmer's office, they would like to have electric vehicles all over the place by 2035. Are we pushing it too fast?
I just personally, I don't think it's practical. You've got to look at, you're always going to have EVs. And for example, Southeast Michigan, around the big cities, you're always going to have a lot of EVs. But once you start moving north, you don't have the same infrastructure. I used to live up north. When you got to drive 45 minutes just to get to a grocery store or a big box store for home improvement, that hour and a half trip, that's a lot to ask for an electric vehicle, especially when you start talking about the winter, harsh winters up in the UP, for example. To me, I don't see that as practical. I think they'll always be there. I think the plug-in hybrid option is going to become very popular. A lot of people seem to like that option.
Yeah. One of my last questions here. What advice would you have to someone who maybe is in a town where they're just doing a little bit of driving or they're thinking of an EV? If you were to tell someone looking into buying one, what advice would you give them?
Just pay attention to the vehicle you're purchasing. Pay attention, look for any recalls. I wouldn't overly worry about it. I would say electric vehicle fires are more than likely fairly uncommon, but from my perspective, it's a little bit different. It's just like a structure fire or a house fire. Most people, their house is never going to catch on fire, but I go to 30 to 40 fires a year in houses. So
Yeah.
I've got a different perspective on things. If something can fail, it will fail.
When you buy an electric car, and I haven't bought one and I don't plan to in the near future, but do you need, and I think we talked about this before, you need to know your electrical in your home. I mean, if you have a 100-year-old home with old electrical, that matters, right? If you buy one, you need to know what's running in your home.
Absolutely. Personally, if I was going to buy an EV, I would make sure I'd have a way to charge it at home, not rely on these charging stations that are out and about, because it's not like filling your car up with gasoline. There's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And like you said, you want to have updated electrical. You probably need a level 2 charger, which is 240 volt, to make to make your charging experience comfortable. Okay. So there's a little bit to it when you start looking at that aspect.
I would hope the dealerships inform that. I would assume they do. I'll hope that they do on that. But if you buy, I don't know if I'm assuming people buy used EVs, so who knows? That's just if someone's listening, just to make sure you get all the technical part worked out. Because if you hook it up to an electrical system that can't handle it, that's not going to be a good situation, probably.
Yeah, and there's been a number of fires in garages because of that. The EV didn't necessarily cause the fire. It was the charger plugged into older electrical that caused the fire. Or there was one in Dexter, Michigan, I believe, where the homeowner actually plugged their EV into an extension cord, and the extension cord is what failed.
Ouch.
So it's another side. You really don't want to be plugging these things into extension cords.
Gotcha. Okay, you do have a website that people can go to, or no? You do?
Yeah, stashedtraining.com. And then
Okay.
I'm also on YouTube where I cover a lot of different topics.
Okay, I'm going to post your links in this video, and when I put videos out on Twitter and that, I'll tag you as well. And
Okay.
if anyone has any questions, they can just drop you or local municipalities or someone wants to reach out to you, they can just email you and communicate
Yep,
with you that way. Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate. I've learned a lot every time I talk to you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for having
Okay,
me on.
thank you. Absolutely.